One other thing I want to mention today is that we'll be recording all these presentations and they'll be going on our YouTube channel. We have a YouTube channel and you can get to it just by Googling KY Forages, all one word, YouTube, and it'll bring it right up. Probably have about 500 different videos on there from all facets of forage and livestock management. And they're organized in playlists underneath conferences. So this will be a fencing school playlist. So if you want to go back and watch a presentation again or share it with someone, then you can do that via our YouTube channel. KY Forages, Forages, all one word, YouTube, and that should be the first thing that pops up. Did we pass out our conference brochures before I forget, Jeremy? Yeah, I see somebody has them over there. Okay, there's some extras up at the front. So we've got a set of fall forage conferences coming up. There are our fall grazing conferences, really top-notch conferences. They're statewide. They're going to be held in 2 locations. Winchester, Kentucky, for you from Bourbon County and over that way, will be your closest location. If you're here in Western Kentucky, then there'll be one in Litchfield. And I don't want to tell you the dates because I'm not looking at the brochure, but the dates are on there, and it'll be the same conference, each location. And then one day we'll be in between the 2 conferences, and we'll have a small group workshop that day that'll be limited to 35 people. We've got a great speaker coming in, Jim Gary. She's got over 47 years of grazing management experience and does grazing consulting. The focus of the conferences is profitability. And I know you're saying this guy has completely lost his mind. I mean, this is probably one of the most profitable times in the history of this country for livestock production with the high cattle prices. But our goal is to kind of get you to think about not just tomorrow or next year, but in 2 or 3 or 4 years when the cattle cycle starts to adjust again. We want you to have pieces in place that are going to let you be profitable, not just at the top of the cattle market, but also at the bottom of the cattle market. So, and that's really the goal of that conference. So if you can join us, we'd love to have you. Well worth taking a day off work and coming to that conference. All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about fencing types and costs. 1 second here. So when we look at characteristics of a desirable fence, a good fence, there's lots of things, we want it to be visible. And that sometimes can be a challenge with some fencing types, but we want animals to see. It's hard to respect something that you can't see. So visibility is important. We want it to be tall and solid and strong. Not cost too much to install would be a good characteristics. We don't often think about it, but there is maintenance associated with fencing, and choosing fencing types that have lower maintenance costs are really important. So we don't want something that we're going to have to maintain every day. We want something that's going to be there and reliable and are going to keep our livestock in with a minimal amount of maintenance. And then the lifespan. Some fences last longer than others. Our goal today, again, is to help you build a fence that's going to last 20 to 25 years. And if you do that and you choose good materials, then I think that can be accomplished with some minimal maintenance. So these are common fencing types that we see around the country here in Kentucky. And wooden plank, we've got woven wire fence. That'd be our traditional hinge joint type of woven wire fence, usually with a less than ideal galvanization on it, so it lasts 4 or 5 years and then it starts to rust. We've got a better type of woven wire fence, and that's a fixed knot high tensile fence. That'll be one that we're putting up today, showing you all how to put up today. That's got a class 3 galvanization or better. That's going to last 20 to 25 years without rusting. We've got a smooth high tensile electrified fence. We generally don't recommend smooth high tensile fence without electric on it because animals will tend to stick their heads through that fence and push the wires apart. So really high tensile fence needs to be electrified, and we'll talk more about that. We'll have a demonstration of a subdivision fence that's constructed with smooth high tensile wire, these black insulated line posts, and it will be electrified. And then we have barbed wire, which commonly, when we talk about barbed wire, people think about that as a low-cost option. And I'm going to show you some numbers from a fence cost calculator that shows that barbed wire is probably not always our lowest cost fence to put in. And it's not a great fence to install, and it's not a great fence to maintain. So we're going to do some cost comparisons today, and really what I want you to look at is the relative difference between fencing types. Okay, not so much focus on the hard numbers, so they may have changed a little bit. Everything's going up and down with increased tariffs and inflation and so forth. But what's really important is a relative cost comparison between the different fencing types. So when Morgan calculated this, she used a tool called the Virginia Tech Fence Cost Calculator, which is just a big spreadsheet, a very good big spreadsheet, and you all can download that. I'll have a QR code for that in a minute, and there may be a QR code in your manual. And she made some assumptions when she did her calculations. She wanted to kind of make the comparisons as close as possible to each other. So she did it on 1,000 foot of fencing. She had a brace on both ends of that fence, and we're going to show you how to build the brace that she quoted in here today. It's called an H brace, and you guys will actually build one at the farm this afternoon. The posts that she used for the H brace were 6 to 7 inch CCA treated posts, so that's an agricultural treatment. You can't buy it for residential lumber anymore, but for agriculture you can still buy it. And they were driven 4 feet in the ground. They were 8 foot long, 6 to 7 inches in diameter. And then she used line posts that were 7 foot, driven 3 foot in the ground, and 4 to 5 inch diameter. That was the main materials that she used. And then she used labor cost, and she did quote labor in here, and that would be your own labor. That wouldn't be a contractor labor. A contractor's going to charge you a lot more than this, right? But she used 7/75 of an hour for building a single H brace, or if it was a double brace, 1.25 hours. Generally, we don't recommend a double H brace. In Peyton will tell you why when he does his presentation. The line posts, they said they took 6 minutes to drive. That can vary depending on your ground. Our first location this week we did in Elizabethtown, and that was a long day. Probably our worst setup day I've had in 20-some years of fence schools, because we had a farm that was like one big rock. And that makes installing fence not so much fun. So it probably took us longer than 6 minutes per post is what I'm saying. So that'll vary, depending. If the soil moisture is good and you've got fairly deep bedrock, then a post can drive like a hot knife through butter. If it's dry and you got to auger a pilot hole first, it's going to take you a little bit longer. Okay, stapling. And Jonathan impressed me when he told me he could staple. How long does it take you to staple 5 wires on a post, Jonathan, would you say? About a minute. That's pretty impressive. I couldn't do that.
That's a 5 bob wire.
5 bob with by hand.
Yep,
by hand. So Morgan said 6 minutes per post. So maybe that's probably my time, not Jonathan's. And then a little bit of labor for unrolling and stretching the fence. This gun will make your life, if you're doing any amount of fencing, if you could borrow one of these or rent one, this will make your life a lot easier. So you can probably staple a line post in, I don't know, what would you say it took? Yeah, less than 30 seconds, probably. And you guys will have a chance to try this afternoon. So probably if you're a contractor, definitely worth the money. If you're not, get your neighbor to buy one, and maybe he'll share it with you. So
labor
I think so. Yeah,
That
yeah,
those numbers would be a single person.
yeah. Okay, that's kind of what Morgan had, the assumptions that Morgan had made when she went through and made these calculations. So this QR code, if you scan it with your phone, will take you to the spreadsheet for the fence cost calculator. And the neat thing about the calculator is it's got prices in it, but you can go in and put your own price in. So if you go to the local co-op, you can find out what your material cost is. You can stick all those in your price sheet in the spreadsheet, and it'll give you a price for your farm of what that will cost. And this is kind of what the calculator looks for. So this is the main menu, and it's got different types of fencing on there. You can click on that, and it'll take you to that spreadsheet. And then it'll allow you to put your actual costs in. So these are, when they put this together, it's probably last updated 10 years ago. Maybe a little bit less than 10 years ago, but it puts in an average cost and then a high and low price range. And then you can put in a cost for your own farm to do the calculations. And this is kind of what one of those sheets would look like after you put the data in and what you want to use for your particular fencing project. So let's talk just a little bit about the different kinds of fence and then how much it costs for 1,000 linear feet of that fence. So the first one is wood plank fence. Probably our most aesthetically pleasing fence, right? When I look at a fence, if I want to look at something that's really beautiful, I go to horse country around Lexington and I look at a board fence like that. Gorgeous, right? Expensive. It's expensive to build, and it's expensive to maintain. So that's two downfalls of a board fence. The other thing about this fence is it's a very nice visual or physical barrier, so they can see it well and they can respect it. That doesn't mean they won't rub on that fence and push the boards off. They probably will. That's generally why we recommend a 4-board fence and not a 3. 3 will keep animals in, but if you've got a 3 and they push a board off, then you've got two boards holding them in. A lot of horse farms around Lexington will actually use one electrified hot wire on the inside of this fence. So behind one of the boards, and that will keep pressure off of that board fence and prolong the life of that board fence. So a really nice fence. That's what my wife would like to have at our place, but we have smooth high tensile electrified because it was relatively inexpensive. So this is the cost of materials that Morgan estimated, about $5,000 per 1,000 linear feet of fence. Labor was about $1,500, and the total was about $6,600 for 1,000 linear feet. And if you put that on a per foot basis, that's $665. Is that what a contractor would charge you to put this fence in? Not even close, right? What's a contractor going to charge for a 4-board fence?
Well, around $9 a foot.
Yeah. You're lucky if you can get $9 a foot. We had some put at the research station after a tornado, $30 a foot.
Well, you got
So-
a figure too on those prices now, again, their relative cost, but the cost of wood and posts and all that is crazy.
Yeah. So this is an expensive option for fencing. A beautiful option, but very expensive. And again, remember, this is before it was painted, so this does not even include painting of the fence. So that's going to be an additional cost, which I have no idea how much that would cost. Okay, let's look at a traditional woven wire fence. So this would be like you would get at the farm store or TSC, kind of a lower quality woven wire fence, not high tensile metal in it, kind of low carbon steel in it, and probably less than ideal galvanization. So commercial galvanization, which would tend to rust in 4 to 5 years. A lot of this fence has been put up through the country. I'm not saying it's a bad fence, but there may be better options than this fence. Again, it's a nice physical barrier. So it's also visible so animals can see it and respect it. So it can be a good option. In Peyton, we'll talk more about fixed knot and hinge joint woven wire, which would be this woven wire that we're talking about right now. So what I want you to look at is the total cost here, but But materials are around $3,000, $1,500 for labor per 1,000 square feet. And if I do the math on that, it comes out to be about $4.33 a foot. So remember that number as we go on through the slides here. So $4.33 a foot for a kind of a traditional woven wire fence. So we're going to talk about another type of woven wire fence with this one. This is a fixed knot woven wire fence. Several different manufacturers. Peyton is with Stay Tough Fencing, and they make a really high quality product, and we're going to install that today. We're going to install a fixed knot woven wire fence with a 6-inch box on it. And it has a class 3 galvanization on it, so it's going to last 20 or 25 years before it starts to rust. This is really a high quality fence. It's made out of high tensile steel, so it has more carbon in it, which makes it stretch less than a low carbon steel, so it stays tight for a longer period of time. When we look at the cost of this, the materials, and that would include the posts and the fencing materials, is about $1,899, so $1,900 per 1,000 square feet. Labor was about $1,000, and the total cost was $2,900 per 1,000 square feet, or about $2.92 a foot. Why is it less? It's a better fence than a hinge joint woven wire fence. Why does it cost less? Anybody know? Less posts. That's exactly right. So what would a post spacing be on a traditional woven wire fence? 8 to 10 foot. That's right. On this fence, because it's a high tensile material, we can go further between posts, and posts are really expensive right now. So when we go further between posts, we can go anywhere between 15 and 20 feet between a post. We're going to do about 20 foot today on a relative flat area at the farm for the demonstration. And that significantly lowers the cost of installing that fence. So this is a better fence for a lower cost. Let's look at the cost of just a traditional high tensile fence that would be electrified. So that's a smooth high tensile fence. We're going to put up 700 feet of that at the farm this afternoon. It'll be a 2-strand subdivision fence in the interior of the pasture that'll be electrified. And so we'll just take a look at what Morgan has. So the materials are around $1,400 per 1,000 linear feet. $750 installation labor, $2,100, so that comes out to be about $2.18 a foot. So pretty good buy. What do you remember? Did you do the calculation on what the fence was? So today, the one that we installed, the 2-strand, that's 700 feet on the farm subdivision fence, using those posts right there, came out to be about 40 to 50 cents a foot. So a pretty good buy for a subdivision fence that's going to last 20 to 30 years. Okay, last one is the beloved barbed wire fence. And Lord knows we had a lot of barbed wire fence on the farm I grew up on. Not my favorite kind of fence to work with, right? It is pretty effective. It's a good physical barrier, pretty good visual barrier, because you're putting multiple strands up, and the posts are fairly close together. When we look at costs, it's about $1,600 for material per 1,000 square feet, linear feet. About $1,000 for installation costs, so about $2,500. And what I want you to think about for a second is that if it's costing you about $2.50 a foot, and this is all relative to the other fences right now, but $2.50 for this fence, or I could put up a fixed knot woven wire fence for $2.90 a foot. It's probably a pretty good investment to put up that fixed knot woven wire fence long term. Just mention posts, and we'll talk more about posts when we go to the farm. When we buy a pressure-treated fence post, we expect it to last somewhere between 25 and 35 years, depending on the diameter of the post and how well it was treated. And that would be a pine post that was treated with a CCA, which is chromium copper arsenate. So don't chew on the post, right? Now, we'll point this out at the farm, but there's different types of pressure-treated posts. There's a post called a perfect post, and that's one where they kind of put it in a machine that kind of shaves off the outside of it to make it a perfect diameter on each end. So that would be 4 inches on one end, 4 inches on the other end. We do not recommend those posts. When we shave off that outer part of the post, it makes the post weaker. And so we recommend that you use a post that has not been turned like that. And when you use a post like that, it'll have a large end and a small end. That's how you tell usually, and maybe a little bit of bark on the post. And that's a better post. They're not as pretty as a turned post, but the durability and the strength are much better. So, and I've got a perfect post to show you, and we also have the post that we would recommend that you use. So the lifespan, again, is somewhere between 25 and 35 years, and I'd say medium to high initial cost, and then maintenance would be relatively low. These should last a long time if they're treated well. A lot of people want to cut their own posts, and that's fine, but they don't last in most cases. So there are cases where some old locust posts have been in 30 years that have lasted, but a lot of posts that we have now that we cut will last somewhere between 7 and 14 years. So if you're making that initial investment and you want that fence to last 20 or 25 years, then we really need to think about the materials that we're using. And a cut post was probably not one of the materials that we would recommend. We got steel posts, steel T-posts, and they have a pretty good lifespan, although most of them do rust unless we buy galvanized posts. They're fairly easy to install. They're not a real good option with electrified fence. So if you have a electrified high tensile fence, then we try to avoid T-posts because they're a dead ground in the system. So if an insulator breaks and it touches a wood post, then maybe we got a little bit of a short there. But if it touches a T-post, then we've got a dead ground. So we try to avoid those in electric fencing systems. We don't really have steel rod access here. Heavy-duty fiberglass posts or some poly posts, we would expect to get 25 years off. Pretty high initial cost, pretty low maintenance. If you use a smaller diameter fiberglass post, they'll be cheaper but won't last quite as long. The point of this slide is that get good materials and get materials that you know are going to last for the lifespan of that fence. Okay, just a little bit on fence planning, and we'll go through this kind of quick. We need to really think about where we want our permanent fences on the farm. If you're just starting out and you're thinking about, well, maybe I should put the fence there or there, the best thing you can do is build a good solid perimeter fence, probably a fixed knot high tensile perimeter fence. Make sure it's nice and clean when you build it, and we'll talk about that. Peyton will talk about that. And then start to subdivide that farm with polywire. And that's temporary fencing with step-in posts. And it's really easy when I put a polywire fence up. I can do it pretty quick. And then I decide, well, it's not quite where I wanted it at. I can move it really easy. If I go in and I drive a bunch 5 to 6 inch wood posts in, chances are that fence is staying where you drove it in at, right? So for that initial planning and setup stage, using polywire with temporary step-in posts is really a good option for figuring out where you want your permanent fences to be. And after you have those permanent subdivisions kind of established, then you can go in and put in a permanent fence on those subdivision lines. And that's kind of what this slide talked a little bit about. Okay, the last thing I want to mention, and we're going to do this today out at the farm, so this will be the third type of fence that we're installing, is going to be a single strand of high tensile fence that's electrified on the inside of a woven wire fence. And there's a couple different options for doing this. If you have a new fence that's really tight, like the one we're going to install today, we can use a wood post offset, and we would drill a hole in the post, drive this into the post, put a staple over it, and then run one single wire through here. And this is a really good option. There's a number of different offsets. This is probably one of the better ones. This is called a ring top offset. There's no metal in the end here. It's kind of a fiberglass material. and it's very durable. It's harder than regular plastic. You can get a kind of a pigtail insulator one, which would be a metal core with a vinyl or polyvinyl or something on the plastic on the outside. But over time, that wears out and cracks, and it is not quite as good of a product. So again, use high quality products. The other one that we'll be demonstrating today is a wire offset, and this is good for woven wire fence. So these legs, and we'll show you how to install these, and you all can actually install some this afternoon, twist onto the horizontal wires in a woven wire fence. And we can put this on a new woven wire fence like we're going to install, but this afternoon we're going to demonstrate on a old woven wire fence, and that's where these are really powerful at. Old woven wire fences tend to be a little bit loose, right, and rusty, and we want to install this on the actual fence material, and if it moves back and forth a little bit, the fence moves with it, the hot wire moves with it. Very effective for extending the life of a existing woven wire fence or even a new woven wire fence because it keeps animal pressure off of that fence. We would install these at about nose height of the animal, and we'll show you how to do that this afternoon. You'll actually get to try some of these. The other places that are a really good fit is on rented property. So if I've got a farm, I rent a farm that's got woven wire fencing on it, and it's not in the best shape, but I can't make that investment in new fence because I don't own the property, then you could install one hot wire on the inside to control your animals. And then if you lose the lease, these just twist right off. You just walk down there, twist these off, and go to the next farm with them. So really good option for extending the life of an existing woven wire fence. Okay, is there any questions? Yes, sir.
Okay, in all fencing, well, where I live, I noticed the fencing's always on the outside of the post.
That,
It's not on the inside of the pasture.
yeah.
Now, I agree it looks bad, but to me, as far as strength, it makes more sense for it to be on the inside of the pasture.
That's where it should be at, right? So,
Regardless of the material.
yeah, so you want them pushing the pressure against the post. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes people will do that for aesthetic reasons, but we don't recommend that. Yeah. Yes, sir?
Question about the tree posts, anecdotal. I had several creosote posts put in near some trees. Pretty big tree came down recently and the roots looked like they had been totally rotted off. Is there concern about like vegetation with the treated posts? Is creosote worse than the newer ones, the CCA, I think you said it was?
Yeah. So generally we recommend the CCA treated posts. People will use creosote posts, but they're kind of nasty to install.
They stink forever.
Yeah, and they do smell.
They're getting harder. You can't hardly find them anymore. Right.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't use them anyway just because of tar and stuff. Like they put it in near a waterway too, so I'm thinking like I can see the sheen in the water from the post.
Yeah, I don't know about the environment. They're probably not what I would say would be environmentally friendly posts, but well, they're both have toxins in them to keep microbes and fungi and bacteria from breaking the wood down, right? But these are probably creosote are probably worse. They're probably moving off of the post. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions?
So, Chris, your cost, is that just initial fence cost?
Yes.
That doesn't include any upkeep?
That doesn't include any maintenance. Yeah. In maintenance, of course, will be variable depending on where the fence is. If it's running through a tree line, maintenance is going to be much higher than if it was running, through just an open pasture. That's flat.
Your maintenance still becomes less because that fence is designed to spring, it's designed to last, so your maintenance becomes much less. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah. Any other questions?
One on this here. Okay, how does most folks in this room here, how do you keep the vegetation cleared out of the way of your fence? As far as like underneath it? Most of you spray or you go around it with a weed eater off?
All right, raise your hands if you spray. How about a weed eater? Probably both. Anybody do both? Yeah, some would. So let's just talk about the advantage. So the advantages of weed eating is that we maintain vegetation underneath that fence, right? What's the disadvantage of weed eating? Somebody's got to weed eat, right? So the labor cost is high, and when you're an old fat guy like me, you know you almost die when it's 90 degrees out and you're weed eating. What's the advantage of spraying? Faster and cheaper, right? What's the disadvantage of spraying? Fence line erosion. Yeah, so you know, I personally don't like to spray non-selective herbicide on fence rows. Or they make some RMA, what is that, Nick? The herbicide that keeps anything from growing underneath where you sprayed at. It does. Boy, spraying does. Yeah. So anyways, long story short, there's no great way to control vegetation, right? But at the research station, we spray with a cocktail of herbicides that kill broadleaf weeds, do not kill fescue, but will kill Johnson grass. And all those herbicides in that cocktail are labeled for fence rows. Not necessarily pasture area, but for fence rows. And that seems to work fairly well because we maintain that fescue underneath the fence row to reduce erosion. What's that? Do nothing. That's right. I didn't even think about that, Nick. Do nothing is an option. That is a real option, right? If you have electric fence, that becomes a little bit less of an option, right? But for a woven wire fence, do nothing. But even with a woven wire fence over time, if you do nothing, it's going to really become infested, especially with things like Japanese honeysuckle and other vining plants. So having some kind of a spray is probably necessary at some point in time.
My facility is like for larger vegetation. It's in the fall after my cows are gone or I have them on the pasture. I just go through and prune off the big stuff.
Pruning off, yeah.
And if I want to grow fence line trees, I'll get them out of the fence so that they're not eating it, but they're still growing.
Good. So pruning's another option. Do you have another option?
Off topic a little bit.
Yeah.
Going back to something you said you spray at the research station to kill Johnson grass, but it doesn't kill fish. What do you spray for that?
Fusilade DX. It's labeled for fence lines. Yeah. Fusilade DX. They use it a lot for roadside vegetation management. So it is labeled for fence lines. You have to be very careful. You want to always follow the label on a herbicide, right? And so when you look for a herbicide for a fence line, it needs to say fence line on it or non-agricultural area fence line.
So you have to be certified to use any of this stuff?
Some of them you have to have you have to be certified to use, depending on what herbicide it is. Okay, any other questions?